Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com. This is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Well, thank you, John. So we're going to try this again today?
Yes, sir.
You made a very good suggestion. But the only means that we have of sort of spreading information about this show is if people share, just to explain what people can do to give us a hand here.
Listen,
doesn't cost you anything.
Doesn't cost you anything. And if you love the Lowell Green Show, we appreciate that so much. All you got to do is there's a share button right below the video on the Facebook. If you just hit share and share that to your own Facebook page, it means your friends and your family are going to see it, and maybe they want to become part of the conversation. That's how you help this show grow. We've also made it easier for you now to get to Lowell Green's personal Facebook page, where I think most of your audience follows you, Lowell. So now they can go to facebook.com/the Lowell Green. Nice and simple.
Anything you want to talk about? As usual, folks, if there's another topic you would like to raise, getting complaints that we're talking about COVID too much. So I am declaring this once again a COVID-free program. No discussion of COVID or pandemics or anything of the sort. And by the way, can I just say this? I couldn't give a sweet flying fox fart. In fact, I couldn't give 1,000 sweet flying fox farts for a story about this obscure, dumb U.S. governor. I'm not even going to give you his name, who has resigned because he was doing, I don't know. I mean, I don't understand. For the life of me, I don't understand why this is such big front page news in Canada. I mean, what has this governor got to do with Canada, for God's sake? Come on. You know, so we got big front page coverage of this guy resigning, and it's the big news. Meantime, we got all sorts of scandals going on here. There's a new report out now, a new investigation of the We scandal. It turns out that not just Justin Trudeau was dishing out money to his buddies at the We charity, so-called charity, but more than a few senior public servants we're pulling off some hanky-panky procedures as well to pump money into them. There's a big story, but I mean, the story is just being absolutely buried in favor of all of this coverage about this governor from New York resigning. What do I care about resigning in governor of New York or any governor? What the hell do I care? Nor should you care. I mean, it's got no significance up here at all, but I don't know what it is. If it's an American scandal, it's front page news. Canadian scandal, page 27, 4 lines. I have a question. Oh, by the way, I have to clear something up. I'm getting people saying, well, what the hell is that I see beside you? Okay.
I noticed that yesterday.
This actually, it's been here for several days. This is what's left, because most of the helium is gone. Helium balloon that my friends gave me for my 85th birthday. It's just about run out of helium.
Yeah, it has certainly seen some better days.
But it's at one point. It sings.
What's it singing?
It was the hit of the party. I don't know what song they're singing.
That sounds like Good Times by Chic.
That's the most it's sung the whole time.
Good times.
Anyway, now you know what it is. Don't ask me why. My wife put it. We had it outside, and I don't know. She was afraid of something or other was going to take off, so it's in here in the office. I'll get rid of it tomorrow. I promise you. So,
well, good, because tomorrow I'm upgrading your camera to a much more high tech one.
Oh, okay, great. So they can see more of my wrinkles. That's wonderful.
Yes, sir.
I have a serious question that I hope and I would love to look. The regular people who respond, I appreciate it very much. There's maybe 8 or 10 who are regulars out. I appreciate that. But it'd be nice to have some different people commenting once in a while. My question is this. In your opinion, should Canada boycott next year's Winter Olympics in Beijing, China? I'm very interested to see that Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole seems to be the only politician who is coming forward with any courage in this regard. He is saying that that China has just become too dangerous for Canadians. They have just passed, as you know, a death sentence for a Canadian on smuggling charges. Whether there's any truth to that is highly doubtful. And yesterday they handed down an 11-year jail term to Michael Spavor on a trumped-up charge, and you can be sure that the other Michael is going to get a similar jail term. I mean, these Michaels have already spent 3 years in a crummy, isolated Chinese jail, and now they've sentenced to another 11 years. So what Aaron O'Toole is saying, and you may disagree, but he may have a point. I'd like to hear from you on this. He says, look, with what's happening, it's just too damn dangerous for Canadians to be seen, heard, travel to China. Very clearly, China doesn't like Canadians. I think we know why, or certainly one of the reasons. And look, if they can arrest these two Michaels on trumped-up charges, very clearly they can do the same with anybody. So O'Toole says, you know what? I understand how hard Canadian athletes have trained and so forth. I know what an imposition this would be. Maybe we could change it to another location, but I don't think that Canada should be at the Olympics, if for no other reason that I don't think it's safe for the athletes or for people to visit. What's your view here? I as I say, some people are saying, well, boycotting the Olympics would only harm the athletes. But there's another aspect here, and that is, how would you feel? Here we are, we're over there making China look good, hosting the Winter Olympics. We've got all of our athletes over there, which would be almost a symbol of approval. Meantime, 3 of our innocent Canadian citizens are smoldering, moldering, languishing in a Chinese jail on trumped-up charges. So, we've sent our athletes over there. It makes China look good in the world, presents a nice, friendly face for China. Meantime, while our athletes over there performing, and of course, we've got probably stories glorifying, showing how great China is and so forth. They've trumped up charges against at least 2 of our citizens, and imposed a death sentence on another one. How I just don't know if we should. I'm reluctant. I've never been in favor of boycotting Olympics, because it creates a political situation with something that should be strictly athletic. But I just don't know, in light of what's happening to our citizens, how we could, in good faith, in good conscience, send our athletes over there. What do you think? Let me ask you this. By the way, the Winter Olympics begin February 4th next year, so it's not that far away. From February 4th to February 20th, Winter Olympics in Beijing, China, and several other towns. Would you go? I wouldn't be caught dead in China. I wouldn't want to. Here's another thing. I don't want to spend a damn bloody cent with that godforsaken country. I have nothing against the Chinese people, great people, industrious, etc. But the government? I mean, we're not only talking about Canadian citizens. They're saber rattling with Taiwan, threatening to declare war against Taiwan, imposing sanctions against Canadian products, farm products, etc. This is not a friendly government. Should we be sending our athletes there? Would you go? John, we have some texts. What are people saying?
Lowell, can I make you smile today?
Yeah.
You wanted to hear from some new people?
Yes.
You wanted feedback?
Yes.
I can't keep up with the madness on social media right now. You have got a storm of comments. Here we go.
Good.
Julie says, what about the convictions in China about the Canadians who are in jail? You did address that, so I think she posted that before. Carrie says, agree. News media worry more about U.S. news. Eric says, stick your balloon in the sun. It will refill and float again. On Twitch, no Canadian should be in China right now or the foreseeable future. Julie adds, it's scary. I agree. No Canadian should be in China. Chrissy on Twitch says, agree to boycott. Athletes might cause a fuss. Hey, we could have our own Olympics here in Canada. Brenda says, it would be unfortunate for the athletes, but absolutely, how many hostages will they need? Todd says not just Canada, the whole world should. The IOPC should pull the games for them.
I agree. You know what? And I agree. I'm glad that you've mentioned that. It could be that if Canada were to boycott, that we might do so in isolation. No other nation. But I suspect that we might set a precedence here. And you know what? Whether other nations want to follow us or not, surely to God, for once, we can do what's right. And I just don't see how it's right to spend money to send athletes, because we're talking millions of dollars we would have to be spending in China to do this. I don't see how in good conscience we can do this while our citizens sit moldering, languishing in cruel conditions in Chinese prisons on trumped up charges. I just don't see how we can do this in good conscience. And if we do it, who knows? Maybe some other nations will buck up their courage and their conscience and do the same damn thing. More text, John.
Terry's on Twitch. He says, yes, Canada should boycott the Olympics for sure. Canada must take a stand against the government of China. Mike says, I definitely think we should boycott Beijing, but I also think we should boycott everything from China. Why would we buy things from China just because they're a little cheaper? Eric says the flooding news about the USA is a distraction. Liberal-run media. Carrie says, I think if I was an Olympian, I don't think I would want to be anywhere near there. Nina says, yes, absolutely boycott. Anne says, absolutely boycott Beijing. Cheryl, absolutely. Not just Canadians, anybody with common sense. China does not like anyone. They don't exactly practice human rights. Helen, I believe you are a new contributor. Thank you. Definitely boycott the Olympics, she says. I would fear for all Canadians who go. Linda, first-time poster, thank you. Problem is, if Canada decides not to go there for the Olympics, would China really care? Not likely. I don't think the message would get through to them.
Yeah, but you know what? And maybe the message would or would not. But it would send a message to Canadians that we have a conscience here, and that we're not going to support this kind of a government. We're not going to send our athletes over there while you imprison illegally our citizens. We're just not going to do it. So whether China would pay attention or not, I don't know. But maybe in this case, we should just care about our own conscience, our own people. But I understand the reluctance. I understand that our athletes look forward to this greatly, particularly the Winter Olympics. We do very, very well. But maybe it's time that Canada stood up for something. I think, among other things, we would show some other nations, hey, listen, you know what? You can't do this to our citizens. I mean, let me ask you this. The pussyfooting around that our government has done now concerning the Michaels and other indignities imposed on us by China, has the pussyfooting got us anywhere? We've shipped millions of dollars to China and still do. We assist them with welfare, et cetera, et cetera. We still do. We're afraid to do anything. Somehow or other, we're going to make China mad. You know what? Maybe it's time when we just stood up and did what's right. Jesus, Murphy, have some guts, Trudeau. Get some guts. Get some balls. Drives me nuts here. You know what? I just hate seeing our country just treated this fashion. Because when you treat a Canadian citizen like that, you're treating me like that. You're treating you. All of you people watching out there and listening, you're being treated like that. It's not, they don't care about the Michaels. This is a Canadian citizen. That's all they care about. So they've got a Michael, which means they've got you. Shields. Got to calm down here because we're talking about good people with Shields. And I just want to stress once again, yes, there are some very, very good financing arrangements. No interest payments, et cetera, et cetera. Check them out. All of the appliances, the appliance accoutrements that you would possibly need, including air fryers. Now, even Debbie, my wife, is beginning to talk about getting an air fryer here. I keep hearing all the glowing reports. Well, they've got all of the air fryers you could possibly shake a stick at or shake anything else at Shields. Folks, I always say this, at least check them out. They're good. They've got great product. Prices are excellent. Delivery is probably the best in the city. And not only that, a major appliance. How about 2 free T-bone steaks? These days, that T-bone steaks are not insignificant. Shields.ca. More text. Yes, John.
Thanks again for sharing the Lowell Green Show on your Facebook. We appreciate that. You, the good listener, it goes a long, long way. And by the way, if you can't be on Lowell's friends list because he's maxed out, we now have it that you can follow Lowell. That means you can participate on his page. All right, a text at 613-413-2217 from Barry. Lowell, I think that we should boycott everything to do with China. They don't have any regard to our copyright and patent laws. They are cheats and thieves, and I have friends that the Chinese who came here to get away from repressive socialist communist government. Peter says,
question.
Yeah, Peter says boycott them and send the lady from China. That's under house arrest to the U.S. First plane going. Trudeau has no balls. Michael, I believe this is the first time we've heard from you. Thank you, Michael. Says, yes, we should stay away from China. Joshua chimes in to say, what if we did like they do with the Russians? Not let them compete under the Canadian flag, but rather as athlete from Canada. It may do very little, but at least it gives the athletes who work hard the choice.
Do you really want to spend millions of dollars in China? Because that's what we're talking about. I mean, to send our athletes over there, this is a very expensive proposition. And a good chunk of that money goes to China, the Chinese government. I mean, that maybe is a rather minor consideration, but it's certainly a consideration. I just think that it's time that for once, we stood up to this damn godforsaken, miserable, human rights lacking government in China. Stand up to them. They're big, they're powerful, they can hurt us with trade. I understand all of this. Time to stand up to the bully. Stand up. Come on, Trudeau. Stand up. If you got any balls, use them. More text. Yes, go ahead, John.
Dean says, how can we in good conscience go to China and support the Olympics when they are keeping some of our citizens in prison until further notice? And even if we went, how do we know China won't arrest them on trumped-up charges like they did with the Michaels? Dean adds, even if our boycott made no difference to China's economy, we need to do it anyway, out of principle, to stand up for what's right. There are
principle. That's a good word. That's the word I've been lacking. Yes, it's a matter of principle. Thank you.
Helen says, agree, Lowell, no Canadian money should support the Olympics. Sean says, boycott and stop all funding. I do have a question. If the Canadians were there, would we be on the hook for some sort of private security for them?
Yes.
Just based on the two Michael situation, would we be looking at additional
absolutely.
security? Yeah, okay, so there's that. Dan says boycott the Olympics has become political. Athletes protest for their own gains, but won't protest the human rights in China. Nina says, I'm also afraid our two Michaels have already been given a death sentence by China and have no hope of ever seeing Canada again, regardless of anything we do. They were sentenced the first day they were arrested. We've got a phone call, Lowell. I haven't screened it. Do you want to go to the phone?
Please.
All right, you're on live with Lowell Green. Who's this, please?
Hi, it's Debbie.
Hello, Debbie.
Hi.
Yes.
You are absolutely dead wrong about the importance of the Andrew Cuomo case. The case means that, yes, he's disgraced. We don't think it's a big deal over here. You don't seem to think it's a big deal. But the women, that means the women have won. They've been listened to, they've been believed, and enough pressure was put on him that he's finally out of office, unable to torture, prey, and abuse other women. That's the whole point of it. You may think it's unimportant, but it's quite important.
Well, yeah,
Not only that,
important in the United States, but I just don't see it as
true.
Okay.
It's
Go
important here. And I'll tell you why, because I was reading in one of the news feeds today that the Canadian government, the military, won't hand over the files on the sexual abusers and let the RCMP investigate, which means that we're barricading the truth. We're not supporting these women, and we're letting those men, those generals and whoever they are, get away with sexual abuse, misuse of power, threats, God knows what.
So what you're saying is that the Como story is important to us because it points out the contrast between the way that this is handled in the United States and the way it's shuffled underneath the carpet here in Canada. Is that the point you're making? Because that's a good point. It's a good point.
That is a good point. And enough women came forward to the law and were believed, as I say, and they forced him out. And it was maybe public pressure, but he deserves that. He deserves to resign in ignominy. And
let me ask you. I understand that. Let me ask you this: could it be that American women consider this more serious than Canadian women? Because I don't see Canadian women all that upset about what's happening in our military. I mean, I just don't see any protests on behalf of women in this country. What do you see?
I know, but they could lose their jobs. I think they're being subtly threatened by the power of the government not to go further.
But just ordinary Canadian women. I mean, where are the protests? Where are the marches in the street demanding
Well,
that?
I don't know. Maybe they haven't thought it through, or maybe they are not thinking about it at all. But I am, and like I say, you were wrong to take that stance initially.
Well, okay, and I understand you're talking about it's the contrast. In the United States, they pinned this guy his hide, and here in Canada, we're just shuffling it off, including, by the way, charges or allegations, at least, against the Prime Minister. Just as I say,
that's what I
buried
mean.
under the carpet.
The government is keeping it buried. The ordinary people wouldn't be keeping it buried. They're using all their power to disregard these women and support the military.
Okay, you know what? You've brought a new perspective to this. Thank you for your call. Very interesting. If anybody else has any ideas on that, it's a very good point. There certainly is a contrast. In the United States, it didn't take people there very long to get rid of Como. Here in Canada, I mean, we just don't seem to have the same reaction to allegations of sexual assaults, et cetera, et cetera. She's making a very good point. More texts. Yes, John.
Linda is applauding Debbie's call. She says, totally agreed. Julie also very much appreciating Debbie's stance on that. Thank you for weighing in. Again, the number here, 613-413-2217. Anne says, Meng Wanzhou and her lawyers will tie up the court for years with her appeals, so Canada needs to take a stand to free the Michaels. Cheryl chimes in. She say, how about for once we do what is right, not follow what other countries do. Canada needs to stand up. Prime Minister needs to get his head out of the sand. For once, let's be a leader and not a follower. Macaulay E., I believe you're a new poster. Wow, lots of new posters today, Lowell. You asked for it, you got it. Every Canadian should stop buying made-in-China crap. Buy Canadian, says Macaulay E. Cheryl adds, no. That money could be spent right here at home on Twitch. The problem is that most of the athletes only get one shot at the Olympics, and boycotting one means they won't ever have a chance to do it. It would be a tough call. And David says, I always try and buy Canadian every time. Unlike the Americans, Canadians should be listing each item that goes in to a product. Americans list the percentage of what, where, the parts of a vehicle, and where the product came from. Canadian labels just say made from domestic and foreign parts.
Interesting. I have another topic here. And by the way, if you still have some more thoughts on that, please, if you have any thoughts concerning Debbie's comments, be glad to hear those as well.
Yep, they're still coming in right now. I'm logging in for you.
Good. On another topic, what's your feeling about Quebec's Bill 21? Now, don't throw up your hands and say, what the hell's that? I think most of you know that Bill 21 is a highly controversial law passed by the Quebec legislature a couple of years ago, which essentially bans the wearing of religious symbols by public sector employees in positions of authority. Translated, that means that teachers, police officers, judges, government lawyers, and anybody in a position of authority and public employ cannot wear, for example, the Muslim hijab, the Jewish yarmulke, the Sikh turban. Jagmeet Singh has one thought here. Jagmeet Singh could not be, as long as he wears his turban, would not be allowed to do so as a teacher in the province of Quebec, believe it or not. Both Justin Trudeau and Erin O'Toole have sort of tippy-toed around this issue because I think they're fully aware that the great overwhelming majority, as a matter of fact, the latest poll indicates about 64% of Quebecers strongly approve of this bill, only 27% opposed. And I suspect that large numbers, perhaps even the majority of people in Ontario and probably other provinces, support a similar bill. What do you think? Would you welcome a similar bill, Bill 21 or something like it here in Ontario? In your opinion, should teachers, police officers, judges, other public servants in positions of authority be allowed to wear religious symbols of any kind? Now, it's kind of, I don't think hilarious is the word, but there's a lot of irony involved here because you must remember not that long ago, Stephen Harper got himself into a real bag of trouble over this issue. His statement was that we need to see your face just for a moment in a citizenship court as you read the oath of allegiance. He said the rest of the time you can wear the hijab or whatever it is you call that covers your full face and so forth. But when you are reading the oath of allegiance to this country, we need to see your face. Well, what a shitstorm that created, right? Sorry to use the phrase, but it's a good one. I mean, the media just blew this up. I think it cost Harper, the conservatives, the election, to be honest with you. He was called a racist and worse and everything else because he suggested that just for a brief moment, takes maybe 20 seconds to read the oath of allegiance, that we should see your face. The rest of the time you can cover your face, cover whatever you want. And this was outrageous, considered outrageous by the left-leaning media. Today, the entire province of Quebec says, not only can't you cover your face, you can't put the headscarf on as a hijab. You can't wear the Jewish skull cap. You can't wear the turban if you're in a position of authority. And everybody approves it. So a few years ago, Harper gets crucified for saying, we want to see your face when you're reciting the oath. This was terrible. It's I don't know if times have changed that much, or it's simply because one was a conservative and the others are liberals. I don't know. In that regard, let me share a little story, give you an example. We have another phone call coming in.
We do. Randy is on the line. She'd like to talk to you, Lowell.
Randy, go ahead, please.
So I wanted to discuss what you were saying about the Quebec bill. I think it sort of goes so against what we're trying to say is great about Canada, is that we're multicultural and we respect and we're inclusive of all religions. It just lies in the face of that philosophy because they're hiding behind saying, well, it's so we're all like the same. In my own personal opinion, I think the crux of the issue, and even when you say in Ontario that we would support a bill like that, it's really, in my opinion, an anti-Muslim feeling. Because
let me ask you this: how far are you prepared to carry that? As you know, some Muslims, the women, are forced to wear a face covering. Their faces are totally covered. Should they be allowed to? Let's say there's a charge or they're a witness in a court case. Should they be allowed to testify behind that mask?
So I guess my feeling is this: that the premise of the hijab or whatever is modesty. Covering one's face so you can't see it goes against the belief of the traditional Canadian, if you want to call it that, values. But to have your head covered, which in Quebec you wouldn't be able to do, what is the difference if I am teaching and I wear a kerchief over my head? It's not a hijab, if I think that's the right term, but all my hair is covered. I think you would agree to some restrictions. You wouldn't want someone teaching your children whose face was covered, would you? That is correct, and it's not has anything to do with anything religious based. Our mores, our comfort level in our Canadian culture is that people's faces are visible, and I think that is, I guess, where I personally draw the line. But I think when you talk about people's comfort level, nobody cared if before people wore a cross or they wore a kippah or a yarmulke on their head. They were very unobtrusive.
Let me. We're almost running out of time. Let me run a personal experience past you. I'd be interested in your reaction. This is several years ago. I'm broadcasting on George Street for CFRA. And I'm looking across George Street, and there's a little family walking along. It was a terribly hot day, a day very much like today. Humidity is high, the sun is beating down. And walking ahead is a young man in a brief T-shirt and very short shorts and sandals. Didn't even have socks on. He's got his hand, he's holding on to a little boy who is dressed similarly. Several paces behind them is a woman carrying a baby. She is dressed from head to toe in black, including her face is covered in the heat of the sun. I objected. I pointed this out And I tell you, I was severely criticized. I had to make a public apology. I mean, I don't care what you say. That kind of thing is reprehensible. What's your view?
It's a tough one because there are other, in that sense, that's sort of where do you draw the line on?
Do you think that woman, let me ask you this, do you think that woman would willingly drop a black tent over her and walk out in the sun? Or do you think that there was, obviously she was under someone else's power?
Well, it goes like, I guess where I'm thinking is not just Muslim communities, people dress like that as well. You have the very Orthodox Jewish community. You have, I guess, the Amish or Mennonite who wear dress fully, not obviously in black, but they're dressed fully. That's their cultural beliefs. And I guess it's where do you draw the line of Canadian culture, but
let me point out that, excuse me, with the Amish, for example, both the men and women dress similarly. I mean, obviously the woman's in a skirt, but there are special costumes for both. But this was the man in short shorts, a very flimsy T-shirt, and sandals. Behind, not only that, she's lugging the baby, a black tent cast over her.
I mean, I think it's horrible, but at a certain point, where do you allow people a certain amount of freedom of religion, but yet respecting certain of our Canadian culture mores? And I guess that one I'd have to think about more, but I guess go back to the original of head coverings versus face coverings. I guess that's sort of where I personally draw the line.
Thank you for the call. I really appreciate the call. Good call. Thank you. Centennial Glass. Got to get a word in here about my good friends at Centennial Glass. We're talking about financing. It's very important these days. I mean, money is tight. There's no question about it. No matter what it is at Centennial Glass, they'll arrange some financing that I'm sure that you can handle. All right, that's one of the things that they have been doing for years. Great, if it's glass of any kind, windows, doors, glass furniture, custom glass furniture. That's a big thing these days. Custom glass furniture, mirrors, beautiful framed mirrors, and repairs as well, even screen repairs. Centennial Glass does it all. Industrial Avenue, out there near the train yards in Ottawa, and in Renfrew. More texts, John. Yes.
You have a pile of leftovers, which I will forward to you by email, by the way. So we've got a lot still on China. Let's just close with 4 or 5 comments regarding Bill C-21. Lori says, don't care what you have on your head, but show your face, please. And she says also cancer patients wear head kerchiefs. Mike says, absolutely not. If you want to come to Canada, sure, you can practice your religion, but we have our own laws here. How does that saying go? Want to move to Rome, do as the Romans do. He adds, also, why should a Sikh be able to ride a motorcycle with no helmet, carry a large sword? That never made sense to Mike. And finally, Kim says, depending on your religion, you do not have to have a picture taken for a firearms license.
I'm not sure what the relevance is there. Thank you all, folks. Good to hear from so many new people. By the way, John, once again, they just tell them how they share, what to do to share these now. If you want the program to continue, if you want it to grow, if you want more people, want to hear from more people, this is how you can do it.
Yeah, man, it's now easier for people to do that because now you can follow Lowell. You couldn't do that before. You had to be his friends, but now you can follow. So if you're watching the video on Facebook, and it's also on the Blast the Radio Facebook, my personal Facebook timeline, please give it a share. Right below the video on the right-hand side, share. You share that to your timeline. That's just the best advertising we've got, and it just allows people to see that Lowell is still doing his thing and creating absolutely incredible programming like this every single day. All the show details, by the way, if you go to blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green, all the links are there.
Thank you, John. Thank you all. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.